Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day or evening, afternoon, whenever you're watching this video. In this installment of albums that turned 50 in 2023, I'm going to be tackling an artist that you probably wouldn't think would be on a YouTube channel that covers rock and pop music and jazz fusion. But this album that I'm going to be talking about, for me, besides the fact that it turns 50 this year, means a lot to me. I've heard this album over and over again, and every time I listen to it, it never gets old for me. Never. The artist I'm talking about is Bette Midler, and the album I'm talking about is her second album, released November 16th, 1973. Now, Bette Midler, you all know her as actress, comedian, singer, what have you. She signed a contract with Atlantic Records, released her debut album in 1972 called The Divine Miss M. It featured the hits Friends, also featured a version of Superstar, which I knew from listening to the Carpenters do a version of it on their Greatest Hits album. And Superstar has also been covered by Luther Vandross, etc. Now, again, you would think that Bette Midler would not fit on a YouTube channel that talks about rock music and pop and R&B and jazz fusion, but I'm telling you something right now. Growing up with three older sisters, music was always on in the house, and it did not matter what genre it was. When I first heard this album, I was 4 years old, and it really knocked me out. So I'm going to go into it. Now, Bette Midler's sophomore album, self-titled, was produced by Arif Mardin and Barry Manilow. Barry Manilow was quite instrumental in Bette Midler getting discovered. He was her musical director when she started out. He produced her first album, and he also produced this album with Arif Mardin. The album is divided into two sections. The first side is basically torch songs, and the second half is show tunes mixed with 60s pop. It's all covers, basically. She does a version of Skylark from Hoagie Carmichael on side one. She does Drinking Again. She does a track from Kurt Weill, Sarah Johnny. She also does a version of Bob Dylan's I Shall Be Released, which ends side one, which is amazing. It is amazing. Side two, now we're going into a bit about having a bit of fun on side two. Starts off with a version of a track called Optimistic Voices. And when I heard this, basically it's a little number that you hear on The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy is in the land of Oz and you hear the Munchkins singing. Okay. That starts off side two. Then it optimistic voices. Then it segues into a version of Lullaby of Broadway, which is amazing. Amazing. Bette Midler does all the vocals on it, background vocals, harmony vocals. It is perfect. It is sung to perfection. Okay. Then she does a version of Glenn Miller's In the Mood. All right. Which again, it's amazing. You can literally hear thing stand-up bass on the track. It is beautiful. Then it goes into a 60s pop medley. Starts with Uptown. Don't Say Nothing Bad About My Baby, and the Do Run Run. Okay. Then it goes into a jazz track called Twisted, which she puts her own spin on this, and it is bloody brilliant. Okay. It is unbelievable. What I like about this album is on side two, I'll get to the rest of the tracks in a second. But what I like about side two of this album is you can tell that she wanted everybody to have fun while they were recording this. And they did. They really did. Uh, side two ends with her version of Higher and Higher, Your Love Keeps Lifting Me. Okay. Which would later go on to be recorded by Rita Coolidge. For me, this version of Higher and Higher, Your Love Keeps Lifting Me is, for me, again, the definitive version of this track. Okay. Session musicians on this album include Rick Marotta on drums and Steve Gadd on drums. Okay. It's unreal. You wouldn't think an artist like Bette Midler would make my list, but you know what? Again, I like good melodic music. And when an album comes along that sticks in your head and in your heart, and you find yourself thinking about it and humming certain tracks in your head, it's got to count for something. So this album reached number 6 on the Billboard chart when it was released, and it eventually achieved gold status in the US. And In the Mood was released as a single from the album. Okay. This album, as popular as it was, I do think that it does get overlooked by a lot of people. If you want, you can stream this on YouTube. You can listen to it. I first heard of this album from my sisters because our neighbor that literally lived around the corner from us had a copy of it, brought it over. I listened to it with my sisters and I loved it. I was able to get a version of it on remastered on CD in 1996. And I still have it somewhere in the basement, buried in a bunch of boxes I have. So, but yes, this album for me, 10 tracks in all. Again, a mixture of torch songs and Broadway and 60s pop. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. Her vocal prowess on this album, Bette Midler's vocal prowess on this album is bloody brilliant. So if you can, find yourself a copy and give it a listen. All right. And that's it for now. Hope you guys are having a great day. Please leave your comments down below about this album. Do you like this album? Have you heard of this album? Do you not like Bette Midler? You know, is she not your cup of tea? That's fine. Everyone's got their own musical tastes. But along with the albums that were released, like Queen and Dark Side of the Moons and Genesis and other albums of the like, this album deserves a proper display, a proper mention, and a good exploration into it. So hopefully you guys like this episode, and click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that's coming up. And for now, please look after yourselves and one another, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.